Hello and welcome to the video. With Outriders less than 2 weeks away at time of recording, and probably even less than that by the time I get this to go live, I thought I'd make a brief introduction and overview on the 4 classes in Outriders. Now, I'm fully aware that I'm late to the party on this channel regarding the information on the classes, and there's numerous other videos already doing what I'm doing here. But rather than just read off the official press release or regurgitating the class videos that have been released by the developer, I wanted to spend a bit of time with each class and talk about my experience with each of the classes. Plus, I work full time, so you know how it is. I'm sure by now you're all aware what the game entails, but in case you're not, a very brief overview is as follows. Outriders is a third-person looter-shooter RPG by the Polish developer People Can Fly, who also worked on and developed Bulletstorm and Gears of War Judgment. Outriders is also a 3-player drop-in, drop-out co-op experience and is cross-play enabled across PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and PC. Right then, back to the 4 classes. But before we begin, this is by no means a definitive guide, it's just my opinion, and the game only showcases 4 abilities from each class anyway. So, let's begin. First up, the Pyromancer. The Pyromancer actually was the first class that I tried, and it's described by the developer as a mid-range class. And to be fair, I agree with that. I found this to be true. It didn't really have the mobility of the other classes to get in and out of combat quickly, although the developers have said that the class can be spec'd later on to play a bit more tanky. I found personally, and I emphasise, obviously this is just my personal opinion, that the class played a lot like Gears of War or The Division with regards to it being a cover-to-cover style shooter, and with added fire attacks. There are 4 abilities you can unlock as the Pyromancer class, as there is in all the classes. First up was Heatwave. Heatwave is an ignite ability that summons a fiery wave that deals 47 damage and inflicts burn onto all its enemies in its path. So as it states, basically you summon a badass fire wave that can pass through cover and goes quite a distance actually, the range on it's quite good, setting all enemies in its path on fire. The second skill you unlock is Feed the Flames. This is an immobilised type ability, and you select and pull an enemy towards you, dealing 67 damage and draining 67 health, and it also inflicts ash. So basically what you do with this one is you just aim it at an enemy and draw out some of its life, healing yourself in the process and covering the target in ash. The third skill that's available is Thermal Bomb. This is an explosive interrupt skill where you select an enemy to burn interrupt and deal 35 damage. If the enemy is killed while still afflicted by the skill, the enemy will explode, dealing 296 damage. I really enjoyed this skill, to be fair. Hitting an enemy with Thermal Bomb if it was in a group behind cover, and then either finishing it off with your weapon or with a Heatwave ability, then turn the enemy into a walking time bomb. And finally, the 4th and last skill you unlock in the demo is Overheat. This is an explosive interrupt skill that deals 10 damage to all enemies within a large radius and interrupt skills. Enemies afflicted with burn receive 119 damage and the burn will then be consumed. I didn't really get on with this one as well, to be honest with you. I'm sure it's got some uses later on, but I just found I preferred the other 3 skills. But I'm sure as you get further in the game, you'll find more use for this. The healing system has its own specific criteria, as it does for all the classes, but in simplest terms for the Pyromancer, if you kill an enemy that's inflicted with burn, you then receive some of that damage back as heals. Overall, I had a great time playing with the Pyromancer. It was the first class I tried and left enough of an impression for me to pre-order the game. Turning NPCs into walking bombs and triggering them with a wave of fire was pretty cool, to be fair. It was a mid-range, crowd-controlling, fire-loving badass, I thought. Next up was the Technomancer. This was the second class I tried. A class described as a long-range class. And if I'm honest, I found this the least fun of the 4 classes. However, when I say the least favourite, I don't mean it wasn't fun. It's just personal preference, and I just enjoyed the other 3 classes a little bit more. It was still really good though, but one of the classes had to rank 4th, unless you're going to sit on the fence until you get splinters. As I say, the playstyle is described as a long range playstyle, and it played similar to the Pyromancer with regards to cover being an important factor. Well, that was what I found, as once out of cover you could lose all your health pretty quickly. The first skill you unlock as a Technomancer is Shrapnel. Shrapnel is an ordnance interrupt skill. You throw a proximity mine and the explosion deals 129 damage and interrupts the skills of enemies caught within the blast radius. This was probably my least favourite of the 4 skills. However, in fairness, it was a long time before I stopped treating it like a grenade and learnt to place it like a proximity mine, which is what it is. So it was more on me being racked off than anything else. The second skill you unlock as you progress is Cryo Turret. Cryo Turret is a gadget turret skill. You place an automated turret that deals 4 damage and it inflicts freeze onto the enemies. The turret health depletes slowly over time when it takes damage. This skill got me out of trouble on numerous occasions. The fact that it froze enemies and any damage it dealt enabled the Technomancer to heal, man, it got a big thumbs up from me. The third cab off the rank for the Technomancer was the Pain Launcher. The Pain Launcher is an ordnance interrupt skill that places a missile launcher and bombs the area in front of you. Each missile deals 22 damage per hit and interrupts enemy skills. Although it's called the Pain Launcher, it doesn't actually fire out clubber langs, but it did deal significant damage. But the range on it was limited, so you won't be blasting fools from across the map. And the fourth and final skill you unlocked was Blighted Rounds. Blighted Rounds is a decay skill. You fill your current weapons magazine with decay infused bullets that inflict toxic onto enemies. Enemies within a small radius of the main target also receive toxic and 50% of the damage, and the skill lasted until you reload or switch weapons. And as I said earlier, this wasn't my favourite class or way to play the game, but it was no means rubbish or not worth trying. In fact, once I swapped out Shrapnel for toxic rounds, some captains that had given me trouble with other classes, I absolutely rinsed with Technomancer. It's just, all it is honestly, is I just had more fun with the other 3 classes than I did with Technomancer, rather than Technomancer not being worth your time. The Devastator. The Devastator was the 3rd class that I tried. This had been described by the developer as an up-close and personal tank class that rewards aggressive play. The class has the ability to heal when you kill an enemy in close proximity, so the aggressive play style was critical in staying alive. And I found getting right in the mix and blasting fools with a shotgun kept the heals coming in and decimated the battlefield. I really enjoyed the change of pace with this class from the cover to cover playstyle I'd experienced with the previous 2 classes, just running around getting face to face with enemies and tanking through battles. The first skill you unlock is Earthquake. Earthquake is a seismic interrupt skill. You release a shockwave to deal 95 damage and interrupt all enemies in front of you. You basically just release this the way you are facing, like the Pyromancer's heat wave. It goes through cover the same, and the range, whilst not huge, is fairly decent. The second skill you unlock is Golem. Golem is a protection skill, and you fortify yourself against 65% of incoming damage for 8 seconds, ideal for when caught out of position, in the midst of an overwhelming force, protection from a boss's AoE skill, or when advancing through the battlefield through a hail of bullets. The third skill you unlock is Gravity Leap. Gravity Leap is a kinetic interrupt skill. You leap into the air and strike your targets from above, dealing 189 damage and interrupting enemies within a small radius of the area you land in. This was great for leaping into the air, surveying the whole battlefield and slamming into an enemy right behind their lines. It normally resulted in the enemy completely exploding, and as a Devastator heals on kills in a close radius, it was a really useful skill for aggressive heals. And lastly, the fourth and final skill you unlock as Devastator was Reflect Bullets. Reflect bullets is a protection skill. You create a barrier that captures all enemy projectiles and accumulates damage after 10 seconds of triggering the skill. The accumulated damage is reflected back onto the enemies in front of you, and the barrier also protects against melee attacks by reflecting some damage back. This skill was full on Matrix, and it enables you to go all Neo and just catches all the bullets and slams them straight back into the enemies' faces. All in all, I had a ton of fun with Devastator, using the gravity leap to smash a group of enemies in the back line, hitting the stragglers with Earthquake, and then using reflect bullets to then stop damage and return to sender, all the while healing yourself with close proximity skills. It's a close candidate is Devastator for the first character I'll play, but we'll come on to that at the end. But man oh man, give it a try, well worth it. The Trickster. The Trickster came last, but by no means least. Described by the developer as an assassin has the power over time and space. Boy oh boy, I love this class, man. My favourite by far. It was fast, manoeuvrable, you get in, kick ass, get out, get the job done as a time-spending space ninja. Getting the main source of heals for the Trickster was close-up kills like the Devastator. And I know I've just said this, but I cannot emphasise enough how much fun I found this class. And he's definitely my first pick on April the 1st. Anyway, onto the skills. The first skill you unlock is Temporal Blade. Temporal Blade is a damage and interrupt skill. Paralyse and slice enemies in front of you, dealing a whopping 250 damage and inflicting slow and interrupting all targets. You basically just sweep out with a Space Ninja Ghost Sword and the enemies were disintegrating right in front of your eyes in one of the coolest animations I've seen in a while. Man, I love this skill. The second skill you unlock is Slow Trap. Slow Trap is a deception skill. You create a space-time anomalous sphere that inflicts slow onto enemies and projectiles for 10 seconds. You just drop this bad boy when surrounded by enemies and then pick them off by any means you like, either shotgunning fools or whipping out the Temporal Blade and leaving nothing alive. The third skill is Hunt the Prey. Hunt the Prey is a movement skill. Select an enemy and teleport behind them, receiving a 39 shield bonus. Again, an awesome skill this one. Teleporting behind a group of enemies, dropping Slow Trap on them, killing them all with Temporal Blade and coming out of the engagement fully healed and with a shield. The only downside was it was not as useful against captains, but we'll come on to that in a minute. And the last skill you unlocked in the demo for the Trickster was Twisted Rounds. Twisted Rounds is a damage skill. Fill your current weapon's magazine with anomaly infused bullets that increase your firepower by 145, and the skill lasts until you reload or switch weapons. And oh man, again, I love this one. It absolutely shredded. You can see in the footage here, I just had my ass handed to me by this captain. I had used Hunt the Prey and teleported behind him, but the captains see this coming a lot of the times and give you a backhanded slap before you can dish out any damage. So I switched out with Twisted Rounds and the captain got absolutely wrecked. Boom, completely rinsed. Overall, I adored the Trickster. Amazing gameplay, amazing skills, amazing animations. I just loved all of it, and as I said, it's definitely going to be my go-to on launch day, although the Devastator is a close second. So that's my roundup of the 4 classes, and I hope it fills any gaps if you hadn't had time to try them for yourself, or if you're just after a little bit of information on them, or if you've yet to try the game at all. For me, April 1st can't come quick enough. But if you get time, please drop a like or subscribe if you like what you see in here. And I hope to see you on Enoch come April. Ta-ra a bit.